It's that time of year again to start getting ready to decorate your yard. These candy canes are easy to make, easy to paint. I cut them out on the CNC machine. Today I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Hey everyone, welcome back to Pawpaw's Workshop. You know, Christmas is going to be here before you know it. And one of the things that I want to do this year is get an early start on making the Christmas yard art type of signs. And one of the things that I'm doing today is making these candy canes. I think these were a lot of fun. I think they're going to look great in the yard. I have 2 of them made. I'll probably make some more. But this is great for putting out in the yard. Now, one of the things that I really like about these, they're very lightweight and they're easy to be able to store. Because Christmas, even though it only comes once a year, you still have to put these away and store them. And I like to have lightweight, easy to store items. And this is perfect for that. And I love decorating the yard, and I think this is going to look great. To begin this project, I went to the Google search and looked for the coloring pages for the candy canes. And after doing some searching, I found this one. This is a free candy cane template, so I decided to go ahead and save this image into the computer. Once I had it saved on the computer, then all I needed to do was open it up in the VCarve Pro. It's really amazing all the different types of clip art that you can find in the Google search. After saving the image, I went over and opened up VCarve Pro. Here I'm going to select a new file, and then I'm going to go through the job setup. Single-sided setup, and I'm going to select my x-axis at 26 inches and the height for 24 inches. The thickness, this foam is a 1/2 inch thick. It is in inches. I'm using the Z0 position on the surface and the bottom left-hand corner. So with all of that set up now, I'm going to bring in the image and do the trace bitmap. The trace bitmap I've shown before, so I'm not going to go through this again and again to show you how to do that. So this is the file ready now to be able to create the toolpaths. The other thing I want to point out, on the leaves there's some very fine details. I'm not going to be able to pick that up with the bit that I'm using. Because this is the yard sign, to me it's just not that important to be able to have that fine detail. And I really need just 2 tool paths. I want to have 1 tool path that will cut out the candy canes, and I want to have 1 tool path that will do all the interior work. I'm going to be using an 1/8 inch straight bit to be able to cut this out with the 2 tool paths. The first step is I'm going to select the outer line around here and set up the cutout for that. I'll also hold down the shift key and select the other candy cane for that outer edge. I also want this inner portion cut out right here on both of them. So now that I have the tool path selected, I want to be able to now take it over and create the tool path operation. And here I'm using the profile tool path. I'm going to start at the 0 depth, and I'm going to cut down the 1/2 inch so it cuts all the way through the material. As I said earlier, I'm using the 1/8 inch straight bit for this. And I could go in and change the speeds here, or I could edit this and only change the speeds and the feed rates just for this one job. But again, I'm going to keep it real simple and leave this all just as it is. Yes, it is going to cut slower than what I could. I could speed this up because the material that I'm using is a lightweight foam. I'm going to cut this on the outside of this line. I'm also using by tape and glue method to be able to hold this down. So the tabs are actually not necessary. So once this is selected, I can calculate this, and actually I realized that I had accidentally selected the tab, so I'm going to have to change that. But I went ahead and it calculated, and you can see the actual cutout now. So at this point I decided to go back and uncheck the tabs, but you can see the toolpath here on how it actually created this cutout, and that's what I want to do. Now with that done, we need to be able to set up and cut the interior. To do that, I want to highlight the entire project and select all of the tool paths. And for this one, I want to use the pocket tool path. Again, I'm going to start at the 0 cut depth. I'm only going to cut down 1/8 of an inch using the same bit, but I do want to edit the paths. I don't need to have this as 3 paths. I can just do this in 1 path. From there, I'll calculate again, and now you can see the tool paths. That's exactly what I want. That cuts out all that area around my design. Perfect. So that gives me the exact look that I want. You can see all the leaves where it missed that fine detail. And again, that's okay for these yard signs. I'm going to reset everything, and then let's take a look at all of the tool paths. You can see down that cutout where it's going to cut out the candy canes on both of them. And the interior portion looks absolutely great. So it's time to save the file. I save all my files on a thumb drive, and I have it set up on a file folder with the Christmas yard art. So there is the CRV file, and here's my 2 G-code files. This is the cutout, and this is the profile. And by naming it this way, I know what bit that I'm using, and I know which file to be able to load into the controller to be able to carve. And of course, I have the original file, which is the CRV file, that I can load back into the computer under the VCarve Pro at any time and make adjustments. So this is the way I keep all the different files that I have. Very easy, very simple to be able to keep everything organized and know exactly where the files are located. Now it's time to get started and get this project cut out. I'm taking a piece of the 1/2 inch foam. I'm measuring over the 24 inches, and I'll just make a mark with my utility knife, and I'll do the same thing going to the other direction. I'm going to measure up to 26 inches and mark that again with the utility knife. From there, I'm just going to use the T-square and make the cut. Unfortunately, this is a 24-inch T-square, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of extra work, but all in all, this is still pretty easy. This is a metal T-square, so I can easily use the utility knife and make the cuts. Once that's done, I can just bend this and make that last little bit of cut. I don't want to cut all the way through. If you do, it's going to score the tabletop. But this is easy enough to be able to do with this foam. And on the other piece, same thing. I'll just cut it very easily and have that taken care of. Now, the next step's actually very, very important to do. This foam has a film on this. You need to grab the edge of that and remove this film. Get rid of that, throw it away, you don't need it. Now, of course, this film's going to be on both sides. So might as well get rid of it all right now. That way you won't forget, and that will cause a problem if you left that on there. So now we'll take this over to the CNC machine and get it set up. So this is how it's going to be placed right down here on the wasteboard. And I'm going to be using the glue and the tape method. This is the Starbond medium glue with the accelerator, and the accelerator does not hurt the foam. And having a grid line on this wasteboard, oh, it makes it so much easier to be able to have the tape perfectly aligned and know where that tape is. So I literally just use 3 pieces. So often I see people put way too much tape and way too much glue down. This is plenty of glue, plenty of tape to be able to hold this piece of foam in place. And all I do is just put 1 thin bead of the glue down on this tape, and it doesn't take much. This method has not failed me in the years that I have been doing it, and this has been very successful. So now I'll take the accelerator and very lightly spray it on the tape. Again, it doesn't take much at all to be able to activate this glue and make it dry virtually instantly. Then I'll just flip it over, drop it right down into its position using those dowel rods as my fence, and I just hold this down for a few seconds. That's all that's necessary. And it's ready to go. Now I'm using the OpenBuild controller software, and when I turn on the machine, I hit the unlock the alarm and hit the home. When I do the home, it will run through the homing cycle, and this will bring the machine right down to the bottom left-hand corner. Now that is the machine 0 position. When I built the wasteboard with the grid lines, I preset the work position into this. So by moving it over to that location now, that gives me my work zero position with no guesswork whatsoever, and it gives me perfect results every time. There's no jog in the machine to be able to get that correct. Now this is the bit that I'm using. It's an 1/8 inch straight bit, nothing fancy. It's a 2-flute bit. From here, I've got the bit in. I'm going to Z the machine now, and this is a probe that I had made several years ago. Works great. The probes do not have to be the fancy store-bought probes, and this one works just as good as those expensive ones for just literally scrap material in the shop. At this point, I turn the machine on, load that G-code file, and I can hit run job. And it's going to cut out my 2 candy canes. Now cutting foam is very easy and it can be very fast. But one thing you have to realize, yes, it's very messy. Now I'm not using the dust boot here because I wanted you to be able to see the actual operation. Normally I would have the dust boot on and most of this foam dust would be captured and gone. But you do have to realize that's an important thing that you need to have on your machine, because it does generate a lot of foam dust, and it's a lot easier to be able to capture it with the dust collection. But here again, I wanted you to be able to see it without having that dust collection on. I think it's easier for you guys at home to be able to see it, and it's just a little bit of a mess for me to clean up in the shop, but I think well worth it. So after running the profile, I changed over to the cutout. The cutout now is all finished. It looks absolutely fantastic. I just got to get it off of the wasteboard and get ready to paint. There's very little cleanup that needs to be done with this project. I really like how these turned out. Using the CNC machine to be able to cut these out is just so much easier than trying to do something like this by hand. Now as far as painting, I just take some inexpensive paint and I want to cover all of this foam, both sides, with this white paint. Once that dries, then I can start working in magic and add the color. And I do both sides at the same time. Now one little trick that I want to show you to be able to keep that paint out of that edge of the can is use a rubber band. That way when you dip the paintbrush into the can, you wipe the excess of the brush off with that rubber band, and it keeps that can from getting all that paint built in and preventing that lid from going on. Now that all this white paint is done on both sides, I'm going to set up the little stand to be able to let it dry. This keeps it off the table and it makes it very easy. The last thing, touch up that little bit of area where my fingers were holding on to the foam. Now the paint that I'm using is just the paint that you can pick up at Walmart or Hobby Lobby, Michael's, and it's just the acrylic paint. And this is kind of a mixture of the different ones. Nothing special, nothing fancy about this. Now this paint will cover in really one coat, but I like to be able to put on 2 coats. It just gives more of a rich look, and it adds a little bit of depth to the project itself. Now because I cut this down 1/8 of an inch, it makes painting this very, very easy. It's hard to make a mistake. And I really love how these turned out. I think these are going to be fantastic in the yard. Hey everyone, thanks a lot for watching this video today. Get started on making your Christmas yard art signs now, because time is going to slip away. It'll be here before you know it, and it'll be time to be doing all of that decorating. If you like this video, by all means, give me the thumbs up. Don't forget, subscribe down here, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. So for now, bye-bye everyone.